Welcome to the France 24 debate, and it promises to be several weeks of intrigue and struggle. Pope Benedict XVI gave his final address to cardinals at the Vatican this Thursday, shortly becoming the first pope in 600 years to resign. These were his parting words. May the College of Cardinals work like an orchestra, where diversity, an expression of the universal church, always works towards a higher and harmonious agreement. Benedict then took off from the hill in the Vatican gardens, arriving at the papal retreat of Castel Gandolfo, south of Rome. Now, this succession process is unusually long and plenty of time to bring the knives out. In recent months, the world has learnt of bitter rivalries and corruption allegations through the leaks of Vatican documents. And just last week, allegations surfaced in an Italian newspaper of a gay lobby at the Vatican, those accusations denied by the Holy See. So what future, then, for the Vatican? That's what we're discussing in part one of the debate. Joining me tonight, Jean Duchesne, Special Advisor to the Archbishop of Paris. Welcome to you. Thanks for being on the programme. Fadel, Dean of the American Business School of Paris, a specialist in theology and international relations, also a Maronite Catholic from Lebanon. Hello to you. Hello. Marie LaFourcade, journalist and author of the book The Church, A Different Idea of Globalization. Welcome to you.
Hello.
Joining us also from Indiana in the United States, Matthew Bunson, Senior Fellow of the St. Paul Center for Biblical Theology. Thank you to you as well, Matthew, for being with us.
Pleasure to be with you.
Jean Duchesne, do you think that this papal conclave is the opportunity to clean things up?
Well, no, the purpose, the goal of the conclave is simply to pick up the next pope. And I suppose that the next pope will have they will leave him the job of cleaning up things.
Right, so, but there's got to be some direction that's struck at this point, no, in terms of who they want and
well,
what
as far
kind
as
of
I know,
character.
they are not going to discuss policy matters or orientations. They have to choose a man.
Right. Marie LaFourcade, what do you think of these allegations that have been made recently? Do you think they're going to have much impact on the conclave, or is this really going to be completely separate from all that?
I would say I hope no. You see, I think that archbishops and cardinals have a historical responsibility. I think that never before this century, or the century before, there have been so many persecutions against Christians and Catholics. And in fact, everybody speaks about sexual matters inside or outside church. And it remembers me of, you know, when Istanbul was called Constantinople, there were the army Muslims, and there were the discussion was about the sex of angels. And today we speak about the sex of cardinals, but not about the persecutions of Catholics. And Catholic religion is going very, very fast today. There are numerous new Catholics in India, in Africa, and they are persecuted. And I think the problem today is the persecutions of Christians, of Catholics, not of the sex of cardinals. Sure,
but I mean, there's obviously an image problem that the Vatican is dealing with, as I think you alluded to. But let's go to Matthew Bunson. Do you think that this conclave is going to be particularly tricky or tortuous any more than previous ones?
Yes, I think each conclave brings its own set of issues and crises facing the church. If we think, for example, in 1978 with the passing of Pope Paul VI, the question was centered largely on how the church was going to deal with the crisis that had developed after the Second Vatican Council. They chose, in that case, Pope John Paul I, and after his shocking death after 33 days, they elected Pope John Paul II. So each conclave brings, as I said, its own set of issues and priorities. What I think that the cardinals are coming to grips with this particular conclave is not just the resignation of the first pope in 600 or 700 years, depending upon how you want to calculate this, whether it's Gregory XII or Celestine V in 1294. That itself is unusual in the historical life of the Church. But the very issues that Pope Benedict has been grappling with over the last 8 years. I think, for example, of the project of the new evangelization. I think also of the ongoing effort to deal with the global sex abuse crisis. And as one of my fellow guests pointed out, the plight of Christians around the world in very difficult circumstances. We are witnessing the flight of Christians from the Holy Land at a pace that has not been witnessed since the end of the Crusades in the 13th century. So there are many crises, there are many challenges, but there are also many opportunities for the Catholic Church as a global community that the new Pope is going to have to confront, and finding that right person is now the task of the College of Cardinals.
Fady, Fadel, what do you expect from this conclave in terms of what kind of direction it's going to give to the Church?
Well, you know, I join my colleague, Mr. Duchesne, regarding the purpose of the conclave is to choose and to elect the Pope and the person. But through the person, we are choosing also kind of a priority. Which means that if, for example, the tendency, the trend of the cardinals would be to stay in the same path, in the same dynamism of Benedictus XVI, which means that we have to choose a cardinal within the Holy See, you know, government, or we have to choose a cardinal with a pastoral, you know, background and pastoral experience, which means with such more dynamism and such more charisma in this path. I think that behind the person of the future Pope, there is kind of a program. It's not clear, it's not obvious, but it's including, you know, the choice and what are the expectations of the cardinals and of the Church and the world regarding this Pope's choice.
I just want to say a word about how this conclave is actually set up, if I understand it right, because it's a longer than usual process. Those cardinals who are too old to vote have had perhaps more influence than they would have done in a more normal situation, if you will. Do you think that means that there's more of a traditionalist impact on the conclave, Jean Duchesne?
No, I do not think so. I think the cardinals are very independent, and they you should keep it in mind that they are all at the head of most of them, at the head of an important archdiocese, or that they have important jobs in the Roman Curia, and therefore they are strong personalities. Even though none of them wants to be Pope, I'm afraid, or very few of them want to. I mean, who would dream of shouldering such a burden? I mean, this is something you cannot wish to your worst enemy.
Fadel, do you think that that there's going to be a particular, I mean, the age is going to be an issue there or not?
It depends. For example, whether the choice of the cardinals would be to keep going on a Pope of transition, because we don't have to forget that the choice of Pope Benedict XVI was kind of Pope of transition after John Paul II. You know, after the 25 years of reign of John Paul II, it was a big deal, you know, to find or to elect a successor with the same dynamism and charisma. And even the Pope Benedict was aware and conscious that he is a Pope of transition. So now, through the cardinal's choice, we would keep moving in this, you know, direction, having a Pope at the age of 77 or 80. Or, for example, we would, for example, choose the future Pope 70 or 65, etc. So, you know, we don't master all the elements, because within the conclave, the cardinals will discuss, will debate, will see what would be the most appropriate currently for the good of the Church and of the Catholics. And afterwards, we can analyze through their choice whether, for example, the new Pope is still, you know, in the same path, or, for example, there is kind of a change, kind of a reform plan, kind of a new program. So still now, we don't know, and we don't have all the elements to judge and to have kind of a general view. So that's why we are discussing, but without really facts.
Okay. I want to come back to some of these scandals that we briefly mentioned at the beginning of the program, and particularly the latest one. This was a headline in a story in La Repubblica newspaper about a week ago, and this, of course, has overshadowed to some extent the events of what is now coming up in the next few weeks. Gay lobby in the Curia, in inverted commas, I should say, the Vatican in shock, and this alleges that a group of Catholics had solicited male prostitutes among other similar stories. I just want to go to Matthew Bunson. How do you think that's affected the state of play at the moment?
Well, I think it's added a sense of crisis. I think it has driven home not necessarily the specific claims of the scandal, which themselves are largely unsubstantiated. We don't have the kinds of details in this story regarding law and other things that would perhaps be helpful. But it does point, I think, to a general sense of a need for a continuing movement forward in terms of the streamlining and reform of the Roman Curia. Also bringing the Vatican into compliance with a lot of the financial requirements that we have today, and certainly with regard to the EU situation. If we look, for example, at the recent problems that the Vatican Bank has had, if we look at the fact that the Holy See has not been judged in compliance with a lot of its financial transactions, these are less a problem of scandal as much as they are simply not being able to compete yet, not being able to comply fully with the modern requirements for financial transactions and banking. We saw in the pontificate of John Paul II a movement toward modernization. He brought about a pretty thorough reform of the Curia back in the late 1980s. That was a good start. Benedict, for his various reasons, in particular his age at the time of his election, chose not to focus on internal administrations to the degree that some people had perhaps hoped that he would.
I just want to bring in...
As a result.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, as a result, yes.
Well, as a result of that, I think there are definite calls, and you see this being mentioned by the members of the College of Cardinals, for some house cleaning, some definite reforms within the curial structure, and to have better oversight of and transparency in the governance of the Holy See.
John Duchesne, more transparency, better oversight?
Yes, but I think what will be most important, I mean, there will always be problems with the church. There will always be scandals, simply because the church is composed of sinners. And I mean, to claim or to hope that there will never be any shade, this is, I think, unrealistic. Now, what is important is what is the directions the next pope will give. In other words, the priorities of the known priorities of the man will be very important, because what is needed now, the future pope is expected to lead the church really into the 21st century and the third millennium. You see, both John Paul and Benedict were the men of Vatican II. Yeah. Now we've got to turn the page. We've got really to move on. And the question is whether they will find somebody who can really embody hope for the future.
I want to come back to that point in a minute with you, Fadel. But first, let's take a quick listen to some of the reactions from well-wishers today to the departure of Pope Benedict.
It's a precedent, as it's never happened before, but I would say, on the other hand, if he's no longer capable of being the Pope, I think it's very courageous.
I think he has the right to leave, and he's still aware of what he's doing, and he's a guide for a lot of people. Maybe he's also a link between other religions. He can be a spiritual guide, but he can be a moral guide also. So I think he has the right to leave. He can give instructions, what he would like, how he is thinking about humanity, how he is thinking about moral, about society, main things. And in situations, in crises like this today, we need kind of inspiration.
Well, I can tell you that he's a very good pope. He's been very responsible, and he's leaving because he can't do it anymore. What he's doing is correct.
So despite the criticism, some saying that the Pope wasn't interested enough in the administration and the Curia, and that led to some of the drift, very glowing appraisals there, Fadel, particularly the lady who said that he was a link between religions, and obviously that's been quite a major feature of Pope Benedict's work in the Middle East.
Sure. How we are looking at the Holy See, and especially during Pope Benedict's mandate, it was respectful, you know, respectful watching and respectful observation, as well as, you know, at the mandate of John Paul II. Maybe in the first part of Pope Benedict's mandate, there is kind of facing or challenges further to his Ratisbon, you know, lecture.
The speech about Muslims.
Muhammad and, you know,
yes,
the violence. But afterwards, things had been clarified, and the position of the Holy See in the context of the Arab Spring and calling all the parties, you know, to be engaged in a peaceful path, in a peaceful way to resolve and to settle all the issues had been highly appreciated by the regime, by, you know, the governments, and by the revolutionaries. So in the Middle East, Islam, Muslims and Christians have been looking, you know, to the mandate of Pope Benedict in a respectful way. And there is lots of expectations now currently from the Eastern Christians further to Vatican engagement in the policy to defend, you know, their presence and to defend their rights in the Middle East. High and very, how to say, lots of expectations in this direction and towards them.
We'll come back in the second half, of course, to the resonance of Pope Benedict, yes, around the world. But first, just to give a pointer really to what we're going to do, we've got comments really coming into us from our viewers here, from Libertine Conde from the University of Zimbabwe, who says West African cardinals Peter Turkson from Ghana and Francis Arinze of Nigeria should be given a chance. I hope the Catholic cardinals will select the next pope wisely. It is Africa's time. So we're going to be discussing when we come back after the break who should be the next pope. Is it Africa's time? Is it perhaps Latin America's time? And how is the composition of the conclave going to affect those decisions? So do stay with us. We'll be back after the break in just a few minutes.